Well, the BBC has its own news alert. It's not backing down after President Trump threatened to sue the British broadcaster for up to $5 billion after it re-edited remarks he made on January 6th. In an email to his staff, the BBC's chairman says they are, quote, unquote, determined to fight. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host Kayleigh McEnany. Also joining us today, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, Marie Harf, former State Department spokesperson under the Obama administration, also a Fox News contributor, and Jeremy Hunt, Veterans on Duty chairman and former Army intelligence captain. Great to have them both, all. President Trump's battle against the BBC is on. And just as a reminder, here's what the BBC made it seem like the president said versus what he actually said on January 6, 2021. Watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down. Anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
Former UK Prime Minister Liz Truss is joining the chorus of voices who are cheering on Trump.
There are lots of people in Britain who are cheering President Trump on and who want him to sue the BBC because they're a huge problem. They've lied, they've cheated, they've fiddled with footage. There is a lot of excitement amongst conservatives in Britain at the moment that President Trump is actually taking the BBC on. I want to see him progress with this legal suit because I don't think they've been held to account. I bet they carry on printing and publishing and broadcasting fake news, not just about the president, but about the MAGA movement, about the changes that are going on in the world, which many of the British public want to see here in Britain.
The BBC has already issued an apology and a statement. Actually, they issued more than one, but this was written. While the BBC sincerely regrets the manner in which the video clip was edited, we strongly disagree there was a basis for a defamation claim, end of quote. Meanwhile, the BBC is tapping a known Trump critic to headline a lecture titled Moral Revolution. Jeremy, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, for too long, major media companies, whether it be BBC, ABC here in the States, have distorted the president's words. They have intentionally lied about what he has said, all to get across their own agenda and to push their own agenda on their viewers. And what happens when you call them out? Well, they might issue a retraction. They might send a little apology letter and say, oh, we're sorry if this happened. They might send out a little tweet. But what President Trump is doing, he is actually saying, no, that's not enough. We're going to hit you where it hurts. We're going to go after your pocketbook. And so now he's actually getting these huge settlements, not because he needs the money. President Trump doesn't need the money. He's doing it on principle to make sure that these companies know that you're not going to get away with this anymore. So I think it's the right move that he's doing. I think it's great to take this show on the road over to England now and go after BBC for the same type of stuff that has happened here in the States. I applaud the former prime minister for being on the right side of this.
Kayleigh, this isn't a matter of the president finding something rubbing him the wrong way. They changed the facts on a day that divided the nation, that the world was watching by the way that they edited this. It wasn't just unartful, it was fraud.
Yeah, they combined two statements that were about an hour apart, and then they left out the words peacefully and patriotically. President Trump said march peacefully and patriotically. So it totally changed the meaning of what President Trump was trying to say. And I'm glad we're going to see some semblance of accountability here. It's important. British citizens pay $230 a month for the BBC. So imagine if you are a right-wing citizen in the United Kingdom and you look and here they've edited President Trump. Maybe you don't particularly care about that. He's not your president there. But I'm sure you care about other issues. You care about the fact that an internal report at the BBC by an individual named Michael Prescott, who is an independent advisor to the BBC's editorial guidelines and standards board. You care that what he found was that the BBC was overly sympathetic to Hamas talking points. They were carrying water for Hamas on the issue of Gaza. You care that they misled you. They had what he described an LGBT plus reporter censoring coverage of the trans debate. So it's not just President Trump. It's a wide panoply of issues. And you have $230 a month going to the BBC.
Yeah.
If you're in the United Kingdom, that's a huge chunk of money, and you deserve fair and honest reporting and maybe not state-sponsored media.
Well, it's actually more expensive over there because it's pounds.
Yeah.
Right? So what is that, like 300
a year.
something?
It's a year, I should say. So.
All right, Marie.
It was interesting. I was watching the BBC, the version we get here in the States on Friday, and every hour they led with the apology, and they played the correct footage. Like, they are clearly worried about this, I should say. They were leaning into it, not just putting out a written statement. Look, conservatives have been going after the BBC for some time in the UK. This is a sort of conservative bugaboo there in terms of their own media. I think it's incredibly stupid what they did. I think what Donald Trump did on January 6th is bad enough without editing it. By doing that, they take away that piece of the debate and they make it about them. They'll be getting a new chairman at some point. There's some names out there in the mix that have pledged to make this a better organization because they do have a long history. The last thing I will say is that I don't think media have figured out how to deal with Trump yet. Right? I mean, the CBS lawsuit, most legal experts said Trump would have lost. But CBS preemptively gave him a settlement about a 60 Minutes edited interview with Kamala Harris. And then he did 60 Minutes a few weeks ago, and they also edited the interview they aired. So there's a lot of media organizations preemptively settling these lawsuits, which I think Trump realizes is a good tactic for him, but which concerns me a lot about our media companies giving up their ability.
So do you think the BBC can win this? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not a lawyer, but I actually think they have.
You weighed in on the other one,
From what I've read, I think that they have a pretty good case, and they have vehemently apologized. The people that were in charge have gone. They're going to have new leadership, and I don't know that
That vehement apology started after they issued that statement. They had issued one statement, and they started to feel the heat.
It's just
I would say.
stupid of them.
But the course correction didn't happen until you had the leaked memo, and the BBC wouldn't be apologizing unless they were facing $1 billion lawsuit.
$5 billion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's $5 billion now.
$5 billion lawsuit from President Trump, and he has to do this because he's trying to get the media to course correct. I mean, President Trump's probably the most lied about politician, maybe in American history. You've looked at all these. He's also been censored, his accounts suspended from social media as well. So he has to do this to try to get the media to tell the truth. And to Kaylee's point, when you remove peacefully and patriotically and then you plug in fight like hell from 54 minutes later, yeah, editing happens, but it was done maliciously. It was done in a way to defraud. It was dropped a week before the 2024 presidential election. What do we think they wanted to happen? Right? And you talk about these edits. You look at what CBS did to Kamala Harris. They edited it to make her look more coherent.
Which was a big job to begin with.
A big job to edit to begin with. And then you look at what the BBC did to President Trump. It was to look like he was trying to, encourage this, rioting and dangerous things that happened on January 6th. And the last thing I'll point out is that when President Trump talks about the media being the enemy of the people, it is. I mean, you go back to the whole lie about Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot. That led to this war on cops. You look at the lies about Charlottesville, it led to Americans thinking that President Trump supported the neo-Nazis and the KKK, despite explicitly condemning them. And then you look at stuff like this with January 6th. They want Americans to think that he's a fascist, et cetera, et cetera. So the media is the enemy of the people, and he has to sue them to get them to course correct.
I don't agree that the media are totally the enemy of the people. I'd like to say that I'm not.
Well, the mainstream media,
so I'm going to hang on to them if that's okay. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, Lisa, and you have to. Without accountability, this does continue to happen. But this is not about whether or not somebody thought it was cute to put one thing next to the next. This is not inartful. This was somehow on purpose. And look, Marie just brought up a good point. Does replacing the person at the top change this? I don't even know, because I don't know who made this call. Your last quick thought.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's going to have to be accountability. And that's the key here, is that for far too long, media companies have gotten away with this. And I think now we're going to see some real accountability, first with personnel, but also making them pay up. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
$1 billion just seems like
a lot of money.
I mean, no wonder they're worried, right?
That's right.
I get it.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.